Her jealous stepmother cut her stepdaughter's long, beautiful hair, hoping to dim her light. But fate had a different plan. That very girl, now with a bald head, would rise above every hardship and achieve greatness beyond imagination. Her journey from pain to power is one you must witness. Watch till the end to see how her destiny turned into success. You won't want to skip a moment. In the riverside town of Luanga, where the sun kissed the water and the wind carried the songs of the river, there lived a girl named Adeyevde. Her beauty was spoken of in every corner. Glowing skin like polished amber, eyes that held the sparkle of the morning sun, and hair long and coily, bouncing with every step she took. As Adeyevde walked through the market, children stopped to stare. Merchants paused mid-sentence, and even the elders shook their heads in quiet admiration. Whispers followed her like shadows, carrying awe and envy alike. Everyone adored her, celebrated her, wished to see her smile. Yet, not all hearts were soft for her beauty. Her stepmother, Mama Lita, looked upon Adazi with eyes of simmering jealousy, a heart weighed down by bitterness. Every compliment Adazi received felt like a thorn in Mama Lita's pride, and little did Adazi know this envy would soon stir a storm in her life. Adazi's father, Bwana Kato, was a man of quiet strength, a pillar of love in the riverside town of Luanga. After Adazi's mother had passed during childbirth, he raised her alone, pouring all his heart into her every day. Each morning, he would carefully braid her long, coily hair, humming old river songs, and prepare meals with patience and care, as if feeding her body would nourish her spirit too. He often called her my sunrise, for her smile brought light into his life even on the darkest days. The villagers often saw him walking with Adaiva's tiny hand in his, guiding her through the bustling market or the dusty streets, proud and protective. Bwana Kato's world revolved entirely around Adaize. She was his heartbeat, his laughter, his reason to wake with the sun. In his eyes, nothing else mattered but the happiness and safety of his precious daughter. After many years of quiet life and devotion to Adaize, the villagers of Luanga began to whisper among themselves. The girl needs a mother's hand, they would say, someone to guide her through life's lessons. Bwana Kato, who had poured his entire heart into raising Adaize, felt the pressure grow like the summer sun over the river. Though he loved his daughter deeply, he feared she might lack the guidance of a woman in her life, and so he agreed to remarry. Mama Lita, a careful widow with two older daughters, came into their home, bringing laughter and warmth at first glance. Her eyes sparkled and her smile lit the rooms of the small riverside house. Bwana Kato hoped that her presence would bring happiness and support, and that Adaize would flourish even more under the care of a motherly figure, though no one could foresee the envy brewing quietly in Mama Litha's heart. At first, life in the little riverside home felt like a gentle breeze over calm waters. The new family lived together in peace, their days filled with the simple rhythms of village life. They cooked meals side by side, the aroma of fresh maize and river fish filling the small kitchen. Each morning, they drew water from the sparkling lake, balancing clay pots on their heads as laughter echoed across the shore. Evenings were their favorite. Gathered around the fire, they sang old songs their ancestors had passed down, their voices blending with the whisper of the river. For Adaize, it was a dream realized. She finally had sisters to play with, to share secrets, and to learn from. Her heart swelled with love and joy, feeling warmth she had longed for all her life. The home, for a fleeting moment, was filled with harmony, laughter, and hope. But as the days passed, the peace that had settled over the riverside home began to crack. Jealousy crept quietly into Mama Lita's heart like a shadow over the morning sun. Visitors came often, drawn to Adaize's radiant beauty and warm spirit, and their praise seemed endless. This girl is a gift from the spirits, they would say. Her hair alone could make her a queen. Another would whisper in awe. Each compliment, each word of admiration sank like a stone into Mama Lita's heart, and she could feel her daughters fading into the background. Adaize's laughter, her playful chatter, and the way the villagers adored her stirred a bitterness she could not shake. The small house, once filled with harmony, now carried undercurrents of envy and resentment. And little did Adaize know that this jealousy would soon ignite a storm she had never imagined. Slowly, the warmth that once filled the riverside home turned cold. Mama Lita began treating Adaize differently, her smiles fading into sharp commands that cut through the air like the edge of a river stone. Words that had once been gentle and kind now dripped with bitterness, turning every sentence into an insult. Adaize felt the weight of this change on her shoulders, carrying tasks she had never imagined alone. She scrubbed the floors until her hands ached, carried water from the lake under the scorching sun, and prepared meals while her stepsisters lounged in the shade, carefree and laughing. The rhythm of the household shifted. The songs by the fire became quieter, subdued under Mama Lita's growing anger. Adaize's heart ached with confusion, yet she endured, holding on to the small spark of hope that kindness and fairness might one day return to her home. Despite the harshness of Mama Lita's words and the endless chores Adaize endured, each day as she bent over the water pot or swept the dusty floors, she remembered the wisdom of her father, Bwana Kato, echoing in her heart like the song of the river. Kindness is strength, my daughter. Never let another person's darkness steal your light, he had told her many times, his voice steady and full of love. Those words became her shield against cruelty, a gentle fire burning within her spirit. When jealousy and anger surrounded her, Adaize chose patience and grace, letting the bitterness of others slide past her like water over smooth stones. She carried herself with quiet dignity, her heart untouched by the venom around her, believing that goodness had power far greater than resentment. Every small act of kindness became her rebellion, and her light remained unbroken. One rainy season, the skies wept over Luanga, as if sensing the sorrow about to enter the riverside home. Bwana Kato fell suddenly ill, a fever burning through his body like the midday sun. Adaize, with a heart full of love and devotion, tended to him day and night, her hands gentle, her whispers soft, singing the old lullabies her father had taught her. She never left his side, even when the rain lashed against the windows and the mud outside swallowed the village paths. Mama Lita, however, wore a mask of concern, but inside, a quiet relief simmered. She thought that Bwana Kato's death would leave Adaize vulnerable, without protection, stripped of her father's guiding hand. Yet Adaize's spirit remained strong, her loyalty unwavering, and even in the shadow of greed and envy, the river of her love for her father ran deep and unstoppable. When Bwana Kato passed away, the riverside home of Luanga felt emptier than the riverbed in the dry season. Adaize's world collapsed, the light of her life dimmed with the loss of her father, her protector, her guide. Every corner of the house whispered memories of his gentle hands and loving words. Mama Lita, in contrast, performed her grief for all to see, her wails echoing through the village, convincing the neighbors of her sorrow. But behind closed doors, her face turned cold, her eyes sharp with calculation. One thing is clear, she murmured, her voice low and biting. You have nothing in this house. Adaize felt the weight of those words pressing on her chest, yet she held her head high. Though stripped of her father's protection, the river of her spirit ran strong, and a quiet courage began to rise within her. After her father's death, Adaize's life changed drastically. She became the servant of her own home, rising before the sun to fetch water from the river, while the village was still wrapped in the quiet hush of dawn. Her small hands carried heavy pots, and her feet trudged through the mud and dust to the market, where she sold vegetables for coins barely enough to survive. Nights were spent on a thin mat near the kitchen, the smells of cooking and smoke her only companions. Yet, despite the hardships and the cruelty she endured daily, Adaize's beauty remained untarnished. even growing stronger. Like the resilient flowers along the riverbank, passers-by and strangers alike could not help but stare, captivated by her radiant skin, her sparkling eyes, and the strength that shone through every movement. Even in suffering, her spirit and allure refused to bow. Mama Lita's jealousy had been a slow fire, but it now roared into a blaze. One bright morning at the bustling Luanga market, a wealthy merchant stopped in his tracks and praised Adaize openly, admiring her radiant beauty and graceful manner. The crowd murmured in agreement, whispers of admiration echoing through the stalls, drawing even more eyes to the young girl who seemed to glow like the first morning sun. That evening, a shadow stretched across the riverside home. Mama Lita leaned close to her two daughters, her voice low and venomous. "If her beauty disappears," she hissed, "then people will finally notice you." The words slipped through the room like a poisonous wind, carrying intentions dark and cruel. Adiaze, unaware of the storm forming in her stepmother's heart, continued to smile and walk, her light shining, even as envy gathered in the corners of her home. When the village lay silent under the blanket of night, and the moonlight danced softly across the riverside home, Mama Lita moved with quiet cruelty. She crept into Adiaze's room, a razor blade clutched in her hand, her heart full of envy and malice. Without a sound, she cut away the long, coily hair that had been Adiaze's pride, her crowning glory that shimmered like sunlight on the river. The girl awoke to a strange emptiness, her small hands running over her scalp, feeling the sharp loss where her hair once flowed. Her heart shattered, the warmth of her beauty stolen in an instant. That night, tears mixed with a cold breeze, and the home felt heavier, darker. Her crown was gone. Yet even in despair, a quiet ember of strength remained within Adaize, waiting for the moment it would ignite into a fire stronger than any cruelty. What Mama Lita had hoped would destroy Adaize instead became the very thing that lifted her toward her destiny. The night her hair was stolen, the riverside town whispered in sympathy, but no one could have foreseen how the winds of fate were already changing direction. Weeks later, as Adaize walks through the market, her bald head glinting softly under the sun, and her radiant skin glowing like river-polished gold, a stranger stopped in awe. A traveling fashion designer from the city, drawn by the unusual beauty and strength radiating from her, approached her with eyes wide in admiration. "Girl," he said, his voice full of excitement, "this look is powerful. Come with me." That moment changed everything. Adaize left Luanga behind and stepped into a world she had never imagined, one of creativity, elegance, and recognition. She became a model, celebrated far beyond her village, traveling to cities and stages where her presence commanded attention. The same hands that had been forced to work in shadows now paused with confidence under bright lights. What her stepmother had tried to destroy became the gateway to her fame and success. And Mama Lita? The townspeople soon learned of her envy, how it had not harmed Adaize, but had instead poisoned her own heart, leaving her bitter while Adaize soared. The story spread across Luanga, teaching all who listened that jealousy can never dim a light that destiny has chosen to shine. Adaize's journey became a legend, a song of resilience, courage, and the unstoppable power of his spirit born to rise.